Osas, did you greet Ogunogo this morning? No. Why not? Because I no longer serve Ogunogo.
A father watched his son nearly die, survive, and then abandon the family faith. Then he did something unforgivable and told himself it was God's will. The Osadade compound has burned the same fire for 61 years. Not metaphorically, not in the way of family legacies or inherited pride, where people use the word fire and mean something soft. Literally, the forge fire at the center of the Osadade compound in the Ugbowo district of Benin City has not been allowed to go completely cold since 1963, when Osatuhanwen Osadade, patriarch, blacksmith, devotee, first struck iron in the name of Ogunogo and made a promise that his descendants are still paying for. The fire burns low at night and high in the morning. The youngest apprentice in the compound is responsible for feeding it before sunrise. It is the first duty assigned to every boy born into the family, and it is assigned not by a foreman or a father, but by a priest. The same priest, or rather the same office cycling through men of the same lineage, who serves the iron deity, whose shrine sits at the compound's eastern wall, facing the direction from which the first hammer fell. Everyone in Ugbowo knows the Osadade forge. Farmers come from as far as Ekpoma for tools that are said to never break in the field. Mechanics bring engine parts that other welders have declared beyond repair. There's a story, repeated often enough that it has moved from rumor to local mythology, about a plow that the Osadades repaired in 1987, which outlasted 3 tractors and the farmer who owned it. Whether this is true is now irrelevant. It is believed, and belief in a compound like this is infrastructure. Osas Osadade is the great-grandson of Osatuhanwen. He is 31 years old. He has the hands of someone who has worked iron, thick across the palm, cross-hatched with small burns that never fully healed, the left index finger slightly crooked from a break that was set incorrectly at 17. He is also the eldest son of Ekoswehi Osadade, chief devotee of Ogunogo, keeper of the flame, and a man who has not raised his voice in 20 years but has never needed to. 8 months ago, Osas nearly died. He does not speak about it in detail, and the family has learned not to ask. What is known? He was driving back from a delivery in Sapele. A truck crossed the center line on the Benin-Sapele road, and the car Osas was driving was hit with enough force that 2 other men who saw the accident assumed he was dead before the ambulance arrived. He was not. He spent 11 days in the University of Benin Teaching Hospital. He came out walking. The doctors used words like statistically improbable and unexplained recovery. Osas used different words. He said, "Jesus saved me." He said it once, quietly, to his mother in the hospital corridor, and the sentence moved through the compound the way fire moves through dry grass. Ekoswehi Osadade was at the forge when they told him. He did not stop walking. He finished the hinge he was shaping, set it in the cooling bucket, removed his gloves 1 finger at a time, and hung them on the hook beside the bellows. Then he walked to the shrine at the eastern wall and sat in front of it for a long time without speaking. His wife, Adesua, watched from the corridor entrance and knew better than to follow. He came inside at sundown. He sat at the table. He ate. He said nothing about Osas's words. He said nothing about anything. It was the kind of silence that takes up more space than speaking. 3 days later, Osas came home from the hospital and went directly to the forge to resume work. He had lost weight. His movements were slower, but he came back to the fire the way he always had, as a man who knew no other home. The confrontation, when it came, was not loud. It happened on a Tuesday morning when Osas walked past the shrine without pausing to make the morning offering. It was the first time in his adult life he had done this. His grandfather, Osaro, 82 years old, spine halved, eyes still sharp as struck flint, saw it from the corridor and said nothing in that moment. He waited until the family gathered for the afternoon meal. Then, in front of everyone, in the patient and terrible voice of a man who has been storing words for days, Osaro said, "Osas, did you greet Ogunogo this morning?" The table went quiet. Osas set down his spoon. "No, grandfather." "Why not?" Osas looked at his grandfather. He had thought about this moment. He had rehearsed several versions of it in the hospital, in the quiet of the ward at 3 in the morning, when the other patients were sleeping, and he was watching the ceiling and understanding, with the specific clarity that comes only to people who have been very close to death, what he believed and what he did not. "Because I no longer serve Ogunogo," Osas said. "I serve the Lord Jesus Christ. He brought me back, not the shrine." Osaro did not respond immediately. He picked up his cup and drank from it slowly. Around the table, nobody moved. Then he said, with the quietness of a verdict, "Leave the table." Osas left the table. His father watched him go and said nothing. This was, perhaps, the most significant thing that happened at that meal. Osas Osadade, keeper of the flame, chief devotee, said nothing, and everyone noticed.
The first accident happened 9 days after Osas's declaration. Emeka, Osas's cousin, 24, the most skilled of the apprentices, was at the press when something went wrong with the mechanism. The details are disputed. Some say he positioned his hand incorrectly, others say the machine slipped, others say there was a noise before it happened that sounded like nothing natural. What is not disputed is the outcome. Emeka lost the tip of his right ring finger, clean through. The piece was never found. The compound absorbed this the way compounds absorb injuries, with practicality, with the local knowledge of people who work with metal and heat and understand that tools extract a price from time to time. Emeka was taken to the clinic. He came back bandaged, work resumed. 17 days later, Chukwueze, another cousin, the quiet one who had been at the forge since he was 12, put his left hand too close to the grinding wheel during a job he had done hundreds of times before. He lost 2 fingers, the same clinic, the same bandaging, a different quality of silence in the compound afterward. The third accident was Kelechi. He was 20 years old and had only been at the forge for 8 months. He was sweeping the floor when a cooling bar of iron rolled off the rack and pinned his hand to the ground. The heat had not fully left it. He kept all his fingers, but the scarring across his palm was significant enough that the skin grafts took 3 rounds to complete. 3 cousins, 3 hand injuries, 1 month. The women of the compound began to talk in the way that women in such compounds talk, indirectly, in code, in conversations held just loud enough to be overheard. The word they did not say aloud but embedded in everything they said was Ogunogo. The men were divided. The older generation, those who had grown up under Osata Homwe, who remembered the original covenant and what had been exchanged for the forge's reputation, were not divided at all. To them, the pattern was obvious, the message was clear, and the solution was singular. Osas must return to the shrine. Osas refused. It was Adeswa, Osas's mother, who first noticed the other thing. She noticed it the way mothers notice things that their families are too invested or too afraid to see. Quietly, without announcing it, filing the observation somewhere private and returning to it at night when the compound was asleep. What she noticed was this. In the weeks since Osas had stopped performing the morning ritual, his father had also stopped teaching. This was not unusual in itself. Ekoswehi was a man who moved in and out of teaching phases depending on his mood and the demands of the forge. But Adeswa watched more carefully. She watched which apprentices he pulled aside for the individual coaching sessions that were not on any schedule but happened whenever Ekoswehi judged a boy ready for the next level of instruction. She watched which boys were taken into the back room where the old tools were kept, the ones with no modern equivalent, the techniques that were not written down anywhere, that existed only in the transfer between a master and his next in line. She watched. The apprentices being coached were not Emeka, not Chukwueze, not Kelechi. They were boys from outside the family, new apprentices, younger, less experienced. She thought about this for 2 weeks before she said anything to anyone. Then she said it to her youngest son, Uyi, who was 26 and had a habit of understanding things the rest of the family preferred not to understand. "Your father stopped teaching the cousins," she said, "the ones who had the accidents." Uyi looked at her. When did he stop? Around the time Osas made his declaration. A long pause. "So the accidents," Uyi began. "I am not saying anything," Adiswa said. "I am only telling you what I have noticed." But she had said something. She had said the only thing that mattered. The answer, when it came from an unlikely source. A retired school teacher named Mrs. Erabo, who lived 3 houses from the Osadade compound and had known Osatuamin personally, was clearing her late husband's storage when she found a box. In the box was correspondence, old letters, the kind written by hand in blue biro on paper that had yellowed at the edges, from the variety of people. One envelope was addressed in her late husband's handwriting to Osas Osadade and had never been sent. She did not know why. She brought it to Adesua out of something she could not name, an old woman's instinct that this letter had been waiting for the right moment for decades. Adesua read the letter. Then she sat down. Then she read it again. She did not show it to her husband. She showed it to Osas. The letter was dated 1991. Osas would have been 2 years old. It was written by the school teacher's late husband, a man who had been a kind of informal historian of the Ugbowo district, and it recorded something he had witnessed and been asked to keep private. A meeting between Osatuamin Osadade, then in his last years of life, and the then current priest of the Ogunogo shrine. At that meeting, according to the letter, Osatuamin made a confession. The original covenant, the agreement that had established the forge's reputation, that had built the family business across 4 decades, had not been made with the deity's supernatural power alone. Osatuamin had been an extraordinarily skilled metallurgist, trained informally by a colonial-era German engineer who had worked in Benin before independence. The techniques he had learnt were real, material, teachable techniques that had no spiritual content whatsoever. The quality of Osadade iron was not divine. It was the result of specific knowledge, particular alloy ratios, specific heat management protocols, a cooling process that was genuinely different from anything practiced by local smiths of that era. Osatuamin, as he aged, had made a decision. He embedded this knowledge inside the shrine ritual. The morning offering was not only worship, it was, for initiates who had been taught to see it, a set of technical instructions encoded in symbolic form. The direction of the offering corresponded to the angle of the first heat application. The number of times a specific prayer was repeated corresponded to cooling intervals. The specific materials burnt corresponded to the alloy preparation sequence. If you did not know this, if you performed the ritual as pure worship without the technical knowledge overlaid on top, you got the spiritual experience. If you knew what Osatuamin knew, and if it had been passed to you by someone who also knew, you got both, the worship and the instruction. The cousins had not been taught the technical layer. They performed the ritual as worship only. Ekosuehi had never completed their initiation to the level where the technical knowledge was transferred. Without it, working at the forge was more dangerous, not because of Ogunogo, because of physics.
the safety protocols, the specific habits of hand and posture and timing that protected a smith's fingers and palms from the particular hazards of the Osadade process were encoded in the ritual. Without the ritual, without understanding what the ritual was actually transmitting, you were working with techniques whose safety logic you did not possess. Osas read the letter slowly. Then he looked up at his mother. He knew, Osas said. Baba knew. When he stopped teaching the cousins, he removed their protection, Adeswa said, not Ogunogo. The silence between them was long and not clean. This is more devastating than the deity being real, Osas finally said. His mother nodded. Because if Ogunogo did it, you can appease a deity. But if Baba did it, then 3 boys lost parts of their hands, Adeswa said, because a man was angry about his son's faith.
Osas confronted his father at the forge. He brought the letter. He read it aloud in the same voice he used for everything. Not loud, not theatrical, simply clear. Ekosue listened. He kept his hands moving for the first part of it. Then he set down his tools. When Osas finished reading, Ekosue was quiet for a very long time. The fire crackled. The morning light came in sideways from the compound entrance and made the smoke look like it had color. Then Ekosue said, "Your great-grandfather made something extraordinary. He needed it to survive. He put it in the only container he trusted people to protect without understanding why they were protecting it. And you continued it," Osas said. "You knew. I knew. Did you teach the cousins? Any of them?" Ekosue did not answer immediately. The pause was answer enough. "You withheld it deliberately," Osas said. After what I said, you let them walk without... I made a mistake," Ekosue said. It was the quietest thing Osas had ever heard him say. "I was angry. I thought the shrine would... He stopped. He tried again. "I believed the shrine would protect them regardless. I told myself the ritual would be enough even without the full initiation." He looked at his son. "I was wrong, and 3 boys paid for it." The forge fire breathed between them. "Osas," his father said, "what I am going to tell you now I have told no one alive, not Osaro, not your uncles. Only the chief devotee receives it, and I received it too young and kept it too long and used it once as a weapon. You need to hear it, even if you never come back to the shrine, even if you serve your Jesus until you die. You need to hear it because you are my son and because men in this forge need to be safe." Osas sat down on the bench beside the cooling rack. His father began to teach. The letter was never shown to Osaro. This was Adeswa's decision, and Osas respected it. At 82, with the compound in his eyes and Ogunogo in his bones, the old man did not need to know that the covenant he had devoted his life to was also simultaneously a technical manual. Some truths arrived too late to be useful. The 3 cousins recovered. Their initiations were quietly completed, not by Ekosue, who could not do it without explaining why he was doing it now after the accidents, but by a trusted senior craftsman who was told only what he needed to know. The accident stopped. Osas did not return to the shrine. He attends a Pentecostal church in Ugbowo every Sunday. He tithes. He is, by all accounts of those who know him, a sincere believer in the faith that he found in a hospital ward at 2 in the morning when a truck had recently tried to kill him. This has not changed. He also works at the forge every day from 6 in the morning. He performs no ritual. He does not make the offering, but he works with the precision of someone who understands, technically, completely, why each thing is done at each stage and in each particular way. His father watches him sometimes from the corridor entrance, the way fathers watch sons who have become, through some route they did not choose and cannot fully follow, themselves. The fire at the eastern wall burns. Ogunogo's shrine stands. The morning offering is made each day by those who believe in it. And the iron produced in the Osadade forge is still,
after 61 years, the most reliable in Benin City. Whether this is because of the deity or because of a German engineer who taught a man his craft before independence, and that man encoded it in prayer to make sure it survived him, this question, like most of the questions that matter in a family compound, has no clean answer. It is simply held, jointly, the way all inherited things are held, by people who are still learning what they actually received.
Thank you so much for watching. Your time means everything to me. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe so you never miss a story. There's plenty more to come, and I'm grateful to have you here.